There's a lot of good stuff presented to us. And obviously everybody is talking about one of the bigger headlines. I would say potentially one of the biggest headlines of this weekend, centering around Robert Downey Jr., the Russo brothers, the exuberant return of Marvel and the MCU to its exciting heydays, bringing in one of its most notable golden childs to kind of helm the next big threat as Doctor Doom. So one of the questions I've had, and the reason I'm bringing up this article from Variety is because I have been wondering how much they had to pay RDJ to get him to come back. And I made a whole TikTok about this. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you haven't. But basically, in summation, I talked about how, yeah, the script could have been great. The Russo brothers coming back was definitely a plus, you know, knowing the long-standing relationship that Robert Downey Jr. has had with not only Kevin Feige, but with the Russo brothers and the success that they've all kind of had cumulatively together. So I knew that those were big factors. You know, the script had to be hot. Like, it couldn't just be good. Like, the script had to have been substantially incredible to get RDJ, because at this point in his career, I mean, the guy could have gone anywhere. He could have taken on any project, and I'm sure there were projects lined up on his desk that he could have jumped into, but he chose to come back to Marvel. And the third, and I would say arguably one of the most important factors, is how much are you paying me? How much are you paying me? And I don't want roundabout figures, you know, I want a grand total. What's the dollar sign? What's that amount? I think that was a big factor. I won't say it was the most important, and I won't say it was the biggest factor, but I would say they're kind of neck and neck. You know what I mean? So there's been a lot of talk about that. IGN has reported on what they're potentially paying the Russo brothers, which is somewhere the sum of around $80 million plus some perks. And, you know, should the movie, when it releases, hit certain thresholds, that being like $750,000 and $1 billion, right? Then they would essentially receive more money. 80 million is still, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, you got whole movies that come out less than $80 million budgets. So imagine what the budget is looking like for this Avengers film to even pay the directors $80 million. I don't know. I mean, I know they're brothers. I always wondered how that works out. They get $80 million apiece, right? Because they're kind of a directing duo. I'm assuming $80 million just goes to them and they probably split it between each other. They get $40 million. You know, kind of a tag team, you know, a package deal, if you will. And so the article talks about behind Robert Downey Jr. and the Russo brothers mega Avengers paydays. Now, we already kind of have word on what the Russo brothers are going to get. We also know that it's been quoted via IGN and a number of other sources that Robert Downey Jr. will be getting paid significantly more than $80 million. And this isn't even before we've confirmed anyone else that's going to be a part of the movie, right? We know Fantastic Four is supposedly supposed to be a part of the next Avengers film. And I'm sure there's many others that are going to be involved, but 80, like more, significantly more. So, I mean, in my mind, I think significantly more, I think at least double, right? I think at least double. You got to be getting at least double the Russo brothers are getting paid. That's what I think, you know? And I mean, what could significantly more mean? I mean, if it's at minimum, it's got to be twice what they're making. So you're talking $160 million minimum that he's going to be paying. And it could be more or less, but even still, even if it's around that number, even if it was 120 million or 180 million, that's still a lot of money, guys. That's a lot of money just to be a part for what, 2 movies? Is that what it is? He's going to be in it for 2 movies. I don't know. I would say that's still a butt ton of money. Yo, what's up, Jay? How you doing? Thanks for stopping in. Anyway, let's get into this article because I really want to get into this. I really want to touch on this because I think it's an important factor. I think it illustrates to us just how much Marvel is investing in this movie in terms of their budget, based on the factors and the figures that we're seeing here. With just what the Russo brothers are getting paid and speculating what RDJ is getting paid, not even to mention, I don't even think that, I don't know if that is facilitating within the budget of MCU's next big Avengers film. I mean, that's still a lot of money. We're not even talking about the other actors that are going to have to get paid. And that's a lot of money. After a bruising year, Marvel is returning to the very things that worked in the past. That means reuniting with franchise crown jewel Robert Downey Jr., as well as the Russo Brothers, who directed the two most successful movies for the studio, that being Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Now, I want to stop there really quick because there has been a lot of judgment. People have been judging Marvel for returning back and saying things like Marvel's, they're just giving cameos now. They're just giving gimmicks. There's nothing new. There's no substance. And maybe that's true. And I think at this point, with where Marvel is, and the, you could say more or less the lack of faith that people have in them right now in the fandom, based on the some of the projects, it being very hit or miss, in the last couple films and projects, it being some really good, some not so good. I think them going back to the past and going back to what was working, I think that's not a terrible move. It's not a terrible move. Robert Downey Jr. sells tickets and he will get people in the theaters, whether they're excited about it or not. That is one thing that you can rest assured, is that people will see it. They'll go see it because he's in that movie. Now, you know what? Here's the thing too. Even if they kept it as Kang Dynasty, I feel like people still would have gone to see it, because it's an Avengers film. And I think that name alone brings a lot of hype and notoriety. But, the fact that they're bringing in RDJ, I think almost solidified that this is going to be a blockbuster hit. It's going to sell a lot. Them bringing in the Russo brothers is another thing. Listen, this worked in the past. I think from a business perspective, this is a smart move. It's like, hey, we've been trying new things after Endgame. We've been messing with the formula. And I think in a way that is good, but it's risky. And I think that from what we've seen, those risks were not paying off for them. I think time and time again, they were seeing, lower ticket sales for these films. They were seeing less hype around them. I think they were also seeing less return on those investments. Now, granted, you've got things like Black Panther, which did really well. Loki was one of their better series, definitely one of their best projects. But I think there's a lot of projects that they invested a lot of money in that did not return the investments in the way that they were expecting. So, from that perspective, they were not winning. And I think the Kang storyline was getting quite confusing. And, maybe they'll continue on with that in some fashion. The multiversal aspect. I don't know if the multiversal aspect is gone. I think just Kang is gone. Like, that whole part of it is gone. But I don't know. Anyway, but bringing back key members of the old gang won't come cheap. Sources say Marvel is plunking down $80 million for Anthony and Joe Russo to direct Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars, and significantly more for Downey to tackle uber villain Doctor Doom and the two tentpoles. The Russos' deal doesn't include back-end compensation, but it does contain performance escalators that kick in at $750 million and $1 billion threshold. So if they hit those thresholds, they, I guess, seemingly they'll get more money, which will be really nice for them. The brothers will also produce the two films via their AGBO banner. That marks something of a departure for Marvel, which typically doesn't work with outside producers, preferring to keep the team in-house. So that's interesting, right? We know that I think it was after they left, directing Endgame, the Russo brothers went about creating their own kind of banner of I guess films, AGBO. And yeah, they're going to be making these Marvel films under AGBO, which is going to be really interesting. And I think potentially a first for Marvel. For Downey, who helped catapult Marvel into a money printing machine thanks to his turn as Tony Stark in the first Iron Man film in 2008, his deal also is filled with perks that include private jet travel, dedicated security, and a whole trailer encampment for the newly minted Oscar winner. Downey took home this year's Best Supporting Actor honors for his role in Oppenheimer. Now we knew. I mean, even when Robert Downey Jr. was being, honored and celebrated for his role as Louis Strauss in Oppenheimer, we knew that when you get awards like that, the price goes up. And sometimes the price goes up substantially. Now, I think a lot of actors want to be recognized for their work, which I think is why there's so much so much weight placed on things like Emmys and Oscars. But I think from a business perspective, like if you're an agent of one of these actors and they get awarded, you're now able to raise that cost, which will then substantially increase, your income as the agent. And so I think it's kind of huge that Robert Downey Jr. won. I think it was long deserved, but it definitely resulted in a catapult of how much he was going to cost to get him in future movies. He was going to have, far more choices. And so companies and production companies and big films, they were going to have to dish out a lot. So I think, seeing him in green, I think is funny and ironic on a number of levels. Obviously seeing him in green is obviously interesting from, the character perspective, but it's also, I just see a giant dollar sign, a giant bag of money that is going to come his way as part of being a part of this next project. Now, according to one knowledgeable source, Downey is by far the highest paid member of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and has pulled down between $500 million and $600 million over the course of the 4 Avengers films, 3 Iron Man outings, and cameos in The Incredible Hulk, Captain America: Civil War, and Spider-Man: Homecoming. I think we can all agree Robert Downey Jr. joining the MCU was potentially the biggest turning point for an actor we've ever seen. I think, and Marvel did that for a lot of those guys. I mean, Chris Hemsworth, Chris Evans, Jeremy Renner, all those actors who were a part of these films, obviously in different levels, have their careers been helped by being a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I don't think anyone has benefited from it more than Robert Downey Jr. and rightfully so. I mean, he started this thing. Iron Man was their first film as part of the kind of MCU, and since then, he dedicated over a decade to it. So, it makes sense that he was being recognized. But again, we knew it wasn't going to come cheap. Still, some changes are in order. While the Russo Brothers' previous 2 Avengers movies shot in Atlanta, the new outings will be filmed in London beginning in the second quarter of 2025. Now, remember, this film is supposed to come out in 2026. I don't know when it's going to come out. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet. I mean, I think we can all kind of guess it's a summer film. It will drop in May or June, maybe even July. Who knows? But it's a summer film. These films like this, like, you want to drop them in the summer. There's so much to be gained from doing that. Although Marvel had become the most dominant brand in cinema over its first 30 films, it began to show cracks in 2023 with a no-hum Ant-Man sequel that brought in $476 million worldwide, coupled with the disastrous The Marvels, which barely cleared $200 million mark globally. Yeah, they really weren't cooking. And I didn't dislike either of those movies. I thought they were solid movies. Ant-Man I felt like was okay. I didn't dislike it, but there was nothing about it within that film that I was loving, and I didn't personally enjoy the introduction to Kang, who was supposed to be the big bad in Ant-Man. I don't know. This is just me. That's just me. I felt like what I loved about Thanos was there was so much anonymity around the character until he finally revealed himself, right? We only saw Thanos in a couple of post-credit scenes, and we knew that many of the villains that they were facing, whether being Guardians and stuff like that, were working with Thanos. And the name Thanos continued to kind of come up every now and again, continuing to bring in that looming threat. And when he showed up, oh man, it was hot. When he showed up, it was like, you felt like, oh, this is a big threat. Like, this man has been cooking in the background for a while. And maybe they tried to do something different by bringing in Kang and bringing in a villain, the big bad, earlier on to build that threat. But I don't know. I wasn't feeling the impact that I felt with Thanos. And yeah. Anyway, adding to the angst on the Burbank lot, the entire future Avengers arc that centered around villain Kang had to be scrapped amid actor Jonathan Majors' legal troubles. Marvel parent company Disney cut ties with Majors hours after he was convicted of assault and harassment stemming from an altercation with his girlfriend at the time. In short order, director Destin Daniel Cretton exited Avengers Endgame. Variety previously reported in a cover story on the studio's woes, which was one that we definitely read, and it was one that you definitely should check out, that Marvel was considering pivoting from Kang to Doctor Doom as Major's problems mounted, and that Chief Kevin Feige was keen to bring back Downey, who will segue from his Broadway debut in Ayad Akhtar's McNeil in the fall to pre-production on Avengers in the new year. Robert Downey Jr. has been busy. I mean, he's been a busy guy for sure. I think this is a really solid pivot for him from, one of the biggest heroes to one of the biggest villains. I think there is a lot of poetry despite what people are saying. I think that this really could work out. It's one of those things we're just going to have to wait and see. Sources say Downey, who is rep by WME, agreed to return to the MCU if the Russos, who are CAA clients, would be directing. They were the only ones he would work with, says a source familiar with the deal making. After all, the brothers' two Avengers movies earned whopping $4.851 billion combined. As Marvel looks to regain its footing, a Downey-Russo reteaming is a perfect combination of timing and everyone being on the same page, says one executive close to the project. Now, this article does not go into detail as far as how much Downey is going to be getting paid, and perhaps that's something that's still being worked on and figured out as we speak. But I will say the significantly more to me signifies at least two times what the Russos are getting paid for it. So they're getting $80 million plus plus compensation at the end should the film produce certain numbers and certain figures. Robert Downey Jr., listen, coming off that Oscar win, coming off a really strong year, I mean, you knew he was going to get paid. We knew he was going to get paid significantly more. To me, sounds like double, at least double what they're getting paid. Yeah. And it makes me wonder, who else could they potentially be trying to bring back? Are there people that Robert Downey Jr. is close with from that OG Marvel squad that he could be trying to bring back as cameos and things? And look, say what you will about cameos. They bring hype. You know what I mean? They bring hype and they bring excitement. And I think really that's at its core, critics aside and what the naysayers will say and what everyone wants to make fun of with Marvel bringing in a lot of cameos now, is people will go and see it. You know what I mean? Marvel will still make money. And I think the stories can still be good, even if they're recycling actors and bringing in some of the same people. Even if there's a Thor cameo, maybe Thor comes back for Avengers Doomsday. Maybe they bring in, I don't know. There's so many other people that maybe we haven't even thought of that they could potentially bring back. And so, I think from the outside looking in, it's easy to judge those things and say, come on, Marvel, come up with something else. Do something better. Are you guys really out of original ideas? But then there's the other part, that when that movie comes out and that, so-and-so is going to be in it, maybe they bring in the OG Bruce Banner or something like that. I don't know. People will go see that, they will go see that. Maybe they bring in Tom Cruise and have him play an Iron Man variant. Maybe Robert Downey Jr. puts on the Iron Man suit again and potentially takes on himself in a clash of titans where Iron Man, a version of Iron Man, which is very possible, right? If we're still dealing with the variants and all that, could take on, this Doctor Doom version, who I think is like, and who potentially could just be an Iron Man variant or something. I don't know. I'm sure there's ways that they could play with the story that make it make sense. But yeah, this is exciting. Either way, I'm looking forward to this. And I think that, when the dust settles and we start to actually getting close to seeing him potentially first time in the suit, maybe we get our first teaser, we get our first trailer for the film. Oh yeah, that excitement and that those hype levels are only going to continue to skyrocket for everyone involved. And so, I think, yeah, I just wanted to talk about this to see, potentially pick your brain and see if you think this amount is justified, whatever they're paying him. Obviously the figures aren't, they're not listed here, but we can assume it's a lot. We can assume, I think safely assume, it's at least over 100 million. I think that's pretty safe to assume. I can't imagine Robert Downey Jr. would go for anything less as being the big bad. And I think, anyway, as far as this story is concerned, it's going to be really interesting to see how this whole thing shakes out. And, either way, despite what we think about this, I'm excited to see what happens next. I think this is going to be, this is the resurgence that Marvel needed. This is the excitement they needed. Just looking at the look on Kevin Feige's face. Oh, the man is cooking, and they know this is going to pop. I'm sure they've already read this, maybe they read the script. I don't know if maybe they read a general idea. Maybe they saw a storyboard. This is how we're kind of thinking of this story going, or this Avengers film. This is who we're maybe thinking of bringing in. And, that's subject to change. Maybe new people will come in, whatever. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty hot.